So today I have a wonderful guest, Dr. Frederik Pferdt. Thank you for coming and welcome. I think I wanted to say welcome and hello first.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello, friends, and hi, Kristina. Excited to spend some time together.
And I'm sorry, I did somewhat, I was trying to pronounce your name German way, but I think I didn't pronounce it very well. It's Dr. Frederik Pferdt. And Dr. Frederik Pferdt is from Germany originally, but currently living in California, I believe, in USA. And that is very early in the morning. So if anybody is from there, good morning, and thank you for joining us. Well, in Malaysia, it's late evening, as far as I know. So today we are going to talk about the book of the week of Mindvalley Book Club, which is The Future Is Now. And, well, Dr. Frederik Pferdt is the author of this wonderful book. And first of all, congratulations on being the book of the week in Mindvalley Book Club.
Thank you so much.
I'm very, very happy to highlight this because as of this year, last year was the first award, we are picking the book of the year at the end of each year. So everybody who is the book of the week will be in the running. So that's a great thing. And for those of you who follow Mindvalley Book Club for a long time, you know that we're going through hundreds of books every week to pick just one. So it's really a pleasure for me to talk with such wonderful authors. So all these intros over, let's dive into our today's interview. So my guest today, Dr. Frederik Pferdt, is, you know what? Let me first ask you this question. And I think you can all answer this question in your head. If I say Google and ask you to think of any kind of adjective that first comes to your mind, I bet this adjective would be one of the first ones after maybe global and massive and successful and something like that. I think almost one of the first adjectives would probably be innovative, because this is truly the company which is known for being, well, a trailblazer in so many categories. Now, my guest today is the Chief Innovation Evangelist, well, used to work as a Chief Innovation Evangelist in Google, and I understand that was actually you were the first person to hold this position in the company. And I had to look it up because I really like the abbreviation, because Dr. Pferdt actually started a CSI in Google, which is the Creative Skills for Innovation. He's also a teacher in Stanford University, teaching students creativity, innovation, and design, and obviously, he is an authority in this field and has been featured in many, many big media magazines and news outlets, such as The Fast Company, Der Spiegel, which is the biggest magazine in Germany, BBC News, and well, other such media companies. Frederik, did I leave something out, which is very important to mention?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for joining me. And actually, you know, I read your bio to my son this lunch. He's planning to actually apply to Stanford, and he was like, really? So he was very impressed, and I'm very pleased to have you as my guest. So, but first, I want to ask you. We'll talk about the book. So, for those of you who follow Mindvalley Book Club, you would have already seen the book, the link to the book, and hopefully you have the book. It is a wonderful book. I think it is very relevant for our contemporary world, where everything is changing. Although I would guess not just contemporary world has been changing, as the book author so wisely says that we are here as a product of change. But before we go into the book, I want to ask a lot of the qualities that you're writing about in the book, you actually compare them to children. You say that children naturally have them at 100%, and then as we grow up, we lose them. So your interest in the future and your comfort with the future, something which is for a lot of people kind of scary, was it always there? Have you always been like this? Was it something that you just never lost since you were a child, or was it something which you had to rediscover for yourself after having been a grown-up for a while?
Yes, that's a great question. And first of all, great to see everyone joining from so many different places like Arizona, Mexico, Switzerland. We have Botswana in Africa. We have New York, Malaysia. We have Bulgaria. So just wonderful to see like such a global audience joining on this I think, important topic, right? Which is the future. And when you ask me if I ever grew up, I don't think so, right? I still believe that I have this childlike way of thinking and approaching the world as well, which I think is very helpful in these days. As the Zen master Shunryu Suzuki famously said, that in the beginner's mind, there are many opportunities, and in the expert mind, there are only few. So what he means by that is that a beginner's mind, like a childlike mind, approaches problems with, fresh eyes, with curiosity, with creativity, with all of that. And I think that's a very helpful way of approaching problems and challenges in this world as well. As we all, were very curious when we were little, as children. We crawled around the floor and we, looked at everything, we tasted everything. We tried to really make an understanding of the world around us, which helped us to really learn fast. And I think that learning fast is something that I want to maintain and keep. So I can proudly say probably that I hopefully will never grow up in that way.
That's such a wonderful thing. As I was reading your book, I was actually feeling also this longing for the childhood in a way. But I guess what I want to ask, and I do not know if you know the answer, but would it be fair to say that children are naturally not afraid of future? And what happens? What makes us so scared of the future when we grow up? And it seems, at least, well, in my personal case, the longer I live, the more of the future I see, the more I should be actually comfortable with it. But it seems that it becomes more and more scary.
Absolutely. When I view the world through my children's eyes, right? I have three children, and there is a lot of wonder that they just express, right? Like wondering around, beautiful things like, hey, how can be the world different? How can be the world more beautiful? How can be the world um, more fair, more equal? Um, and all of those things. So they ask a lot of questions, right, that really express their curiosity as well around the world and their sense of wonder. And I think we as adults, we can also tap in our sense of wonder again to really ask those beautiful questions that allow us to really not just dream big, but also feel that this is something when we can think it, we can actually achieve it, right? So I want to put a quick exercise in the chat, if I may, when which allows us to think probably differently about the future. So when you think about the future, right, there might be a word that comes to your mind, right? And that word might change. So if you want to complete that sentence, the future is, what's the first word that comes to mind? So just put that in chat. The future is, yes, thank you for kicking us off. Exciting, vast. What are some other words? Foggy, yes. So we don't have a clear picture, probably. Broad, growth. So there's all these words that come first to mind, right? That are, an expression of how we think about the future in general, right? Uncertain is here a word, exciting.
Mhm.
So if I want to continue that exercise and put another sentence here,
Mhm.
which says, the future I create is. So what's the first word that now comes to mind? So if you want to
Mhm.
add another word, so let's see what people are responding. The future I create is greater. It's
Mhm.
opportunistic. It's growth. It's pleasant. It's
Mhm.
mindful. It's successful. It's amazing. And what I notice here in the second sentence, right, the future I create is, we
Mhm.
mostly have, and I think it's probably 100%, it's positive, right? It's optimistic. It's an expression of the future I want to create,
Mhm.
which is different to the first word that people shared, the future is, which is mostly like when you think about the future, then you think about someone else is in control of the future, someone else decides the future for you. The future is uncertain by definition and so forth. So what I want to do with this exercise is I want to help you to understand that the future is in your control because
Mhm.
you mentioned the future I create is. So you're putting yourself into that picture of the future. And I think that's something very useful and something very helpful. Because when we think about the future, many of us fall into a common trap, I think.
Mhm.
We focus on what we want to have, right? A house, a career, a specific life situation. But I think the essential question we ask ourselves is, how do we want to be? Or even more precise, how do we want to feel in the future, right? So if you want to share that now in the chat as well, how do you want to feel in the future? Is that something that if that's something you feel comfortable to share? Please put that in the chat because I think it's the most important and the most relevant question when we think about the future. We should think like, how do I want to feel in the future? And
Mhm.
so Jordan here says enthusiastic, safe, happy, fulfilled, curious, again, happy. And
Mhm.
so these are, the feelings that people want to have in the future. And I think that's the really essential question that we should all ask ourselves because true satisfaction doesn't come from external achievements. And you know that, Christina, right? But from
Mhm.
inner states like connectedness, growth, fulfillment, happiness. Yet the world we live in often nudges us toward a future centered on wanting or having, rather than
Mhm.
allowing us to cultivate a future of being or feeling. And so I
Mhm.
feel that a truly meaningful future is one that really makes us feel wise, fulfilled, and valued. It's not about chasing external benchmarks or but pursuing intrinsic goals, I think, that really
Mhm.
genuinely makes us happy. And so I want to give three examples, hopefully that brings that that point to life. So it's not about owning a house, but experiencing a sense of security and fulfillment.
Mhm.
It's not about marriage, but feeling deeply loved and connected. And it's not about career, but finding purpose and growth in the work we do.
Mhm.
Perhaps this is the real art of shaping the future, letting go of the desire to own more and embracing the joy of really experiencing more.
Thank you for this beautiful answer. And you actually, with your answer, you immediately dived into the deepest, deepest probably topic of the book. I want to take a little step back and maybe just mention a topic about the futures that opened the book, which I found also very aha moment for me, where you said that we very often, when we talk about the future, we talk about a future which is someone else's future, and we never think about the future in terms of what is my future. And that's, for me, when I was reading the book, that was the place where this anxiety got a little bit separated, because a lot of the times we feel anxiety about things which are not even in our control. Now, for those of you who haven't yet read the book, I strongly recommend, because you've already noticed that Dr. Frederick comes with exercises, and this book is full of exercises, literally. You wouldn't even notice how the exercises crop in. There is a story, and then in the middle of the story, you actually start noticing that you're doing something, an exercise. And of course, there are lined out exercises as well. So it's a really great book. It's divided, it's very well structured. We won't go into the structure very deeply in this interview because we don't have a lot of time for that. But I do want to ask, leading into that a little bit. So the main idea of the book is to teach people to be future ready, future ready mind state. Could you define what it means?
Yes. So thank you for sharing that. So you notice the word mind state, which is different from mindset. I think mindset is such a powerful expression that really is omnipresent, right? It's everywhere, right? In kindergarten, we teach our children a specific mindset or specific mindsets. In professional development, we use the terminology mindset a lot as well. And I think Carol Dweck did an amazing job to really promote that, a colleague of mine at Stanford. And what I also felt is that the more I ask people how they really are able to change their mindset, um, the more I understood that it's really hard to change your mindset, right? Because it's based on your belief system, it's based on your values, it's based on your past experiences and so forth. So it's really hard to change your mindset. So what I've tried to do is use a different terminology, which is mind state. And mind state is really the perspective you have in any given moment that really encompasses your current thoughts and feelings and determines how you experience the present. So it's something that you can shift, you can change, it's dynamic, and it's the perspective you have, right? Which really allows you to have a little bit more control over and to actually change it. So mind state is a core concept that I use in the book. And you also mentioned an interesting point, which is the book is not about the future. It's not about like, an objective future that I create or envision and so forth. It's about your future, right? And how you can actually create a better one by using a mind state that allows you to really have a perspective on the future that is driven by optimism, that is driven by openness, by curiosity, by empathy, and by experimentation. For me, those are the dimensions that really allow you to have a different perspective, which leads to more opportunities. And who doesn't want to have more opportunities in their future, right? And I think if you're more optimistic and more open, for example, or more curious like children, you're going to see more opportunities, right? And I think that's really compelling for a lot of people, hopefully too. I just want to show something really briefly, which I'm actually quite proud of, which is the cover of the book, right? So
Yes.
the cover of the book is kind of like you see that reflection, right? That mirror-like image, which is really intentional, designed to show you three things. The first thing is that as soon as you look at the cover, you see yourself, right? So you see yourself reflected, a little blurry, because that's really that metaphor around the future is uncertain. It's blurry. It's not a clear picture, right? When
Mhm.
we think about the future. So that's the first thing. The second thing is as soon as you shift it around, and that means you can shift your perspective, right? You look from a distant, or you look from it from a different angle, right? You see that a kaleidoscope of colors will actually appear. And it is usually a beautiful kaleidoscope of colors, right? So what I want to say is as soon as you shift your perspective, as soon as you look at the world differently, as soon as you look at a situation differently through a lens of empathy or openness, right? You see something more beautiful. You see an opportunity. That's the second thing. And the third thing is you see that it's a shape, right? It's not a
Mm.
perfect circle. It's not a perfect square. And that's what I mean by shaping the future, right?
Ah.
It's in your control that the future is moldable, it's shapeable, right? By every choice you make in every moment. And so making choices in this moment really determines what the future might look like, right? If I choose to be kind to someone, right, and offer a compliment, that will determine my future and their future too, right? That will lead to a more collaborative future, also a more kind future, a more empathetic future, and so forth, right? If I choose hatred or if I choose envy, right, in a situation, that will lead to a very different future. So it's a very simple equation, but the choices we make in every moment determines or equals your future.
It triggers so many questions, of course, in my head. But by the way, another thing which I noticed about your cover, I didn't realize how much meaning it has, was the very unusual font choice. Was there some meaning in that as well?
Um, Absolutely, yes. We looked at many fonts, right? And for me, kind of like that font expresses a little bit of the future as well, right? So it has a little bit of that futuristic feel.
Mm.
But you're not gonna find some people confuse that with technology, right? For a lot of
Mhm.
people, when we think about or discuss the future, it's all
Mhm.
about AI, it's about
Yeah,
technology and so forth.
flying cars.
Exactly. Flying cars, robots, you name it. There is nothing about that in the book, right? So it's written purely to really enable you to live a future-ready life, which um, is not only about technology, it's about like, how do you want to feel in the future, right? That
Mhm.
original question that I posed in the chat, where people responded, people want to feel at peace, joyful, impactful, happy, and so forth. And the book is really about that, that you can choose in every moment how your future will look like, that
Mhm.
you can focus on the things that you can control. As you mentioned, Kristina, earlier on, there are some things we cannot control, right? That are out of our control. But if you choose to focus on the things that are in your control, you have a great chance to create a better future for yourself.
So I want to dive a little bit into it's actually 6 components. The last one you didn't mention is Dimension X, which I think is a little bit different type of component, but I want to talk about the optimism. So I have a feeling that optimism is pretty much a requirement for this formula to work, because it does it does require that you do hope for the better. And there are, although there's no denial of the fact that sometimes horrible things can also happen. But on the other hand, isn't there a predisposition for some people to be more positive about their future, and some people to be a little bit more critical? So is something like optimism, is it a trainable skill? And I know I said there are a lot of exercises, and truly, even that chapter has a lot of exercises. So I think I know the answer, but still, it seems like something such a hard thing to achieve if you do not have a tendency towards being positive.
Yes. And I even go beyond optimism. I use the term radical optimism, right? Which is probably like even um, going further than optimism. But usually we put people in 2 buckets, right? In 2 categories. We put people into like the pessimism bucket, right? And saying like, oh, people are always seeing kind of like the negative in a situation. And we put people into an optimism bucket, right? Where we say like, oh, they're always like seeing the situation through the lens of optimism and positivity. What I also notice is that there's this great metaphor around the glass being half empty or the glass being half full, right? That's what we usually use as an expression of saying, oh, that person is always seeing the glass half empty, right? Or that person is always seeing the glass half full as an optimist. It's a glass, right, which has a certain level of water. So it's about you and how you choose to look at that specific glass. What I want to express with radical optimism is that this goes beyond seeing the glass as half full. It's about believing in the potential for better, which means it's about believing that you can fill the glass even further and being willing to take action to achieve it. So when you reframe challenges as opportunities, you begin to see possibilities everywhere, right? And it's something that is expressed by a great quote by Anais Nin, a famous poet and writer. And she said, you don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are, right? So it's about you and how you choose to look at the world, right? If you always look at, the negative, you're going to find a lot of negativity in the world, right? Talking about the news, right? The news are basically mostly sharing negative news, right? Because that's really triggering our negativity bias that's built in our minds that came from the evolution where we had to think negatively, right, to really protect us. But I think the times are ripe to think more positively, to think more optimistically. And to give you an example, right, an entrepreneur I worked with shared how she turned uh, the pandemic's challenge into an opportunity. When her yoga studio closed, right, because there was social distancing, she couldn't do yoga and invite people into her studio. Instead of lamenting and complaining, she launched an online platform, right, teaching yoga online. And today she connects with students globally, creating a thriving digital business, right? And that's radical optimism in action, right? She didn't just look at seeing the glass as half full, but she looked at the potential for better. What can I do better in this situation? And I think we all have an ability to do that. And you're making a great point. It's a trainable skill. We all can learn to be radically optimistic.
I actually really resonated with one of the exercises, and the exercises are wonderful about uh, changing the yes but into yes and. It's literally, it's almost like a magic trick which forces you to see things differently. For those of you who haven't read the book, I strongly recommend, because it's full of really practical advice. But I want to say why I felt that the optimism was probably the most crucial part of the book, was because even the next chapters opened with something which required a lot of faith in the future. Like, for example, openness. You're open to fall into the arms of other people, even if they don't catch you, which is in a way a little bit unexpected turn of the events. But I so I'm going to not gloss, but go over a whole chunk of the book, because I wanted to slow down a little bit on a chapter about empathy, because this is not something you maybe expect when you're talking about being future ready yourself. And I really loved one quote which from that chapter. Empathy isn't a moral imperative, it's a practical one. So could you talk maybe about empathy in this context, in the context of future readying yourself? How is that relevant, and why is it a practical need?
Absolutely. Yes. Happy to dive into probably one of my favorite dimensions of a future ready mindset, which is empathy, right? But before we go into that, I really liked your comment on yes and yes but, right? It's such a magical thing that I discovered way back when I actually was training at Google a group of leaders in improv, all right? Improv theater, where that is really kind of like the major point, is that you're using yes and as a response to everything, right? When somebody says something, right, you're agreeing and you're building on it to make this idea better. You make this idea bigger. You basically continue the idea someone started, right? And if you think about an example, right, when we think about our lives, right, some might say that, yes, I wanna live a more healthier life, but I don't have time, right? That but I don't have time really stops that idea, right? It basically is a stop sign where you say like, okay, I'm not going to engage in that. I'm not going to live a healthier life. If you change that but into an and, then you say, I want to live a more healthier life and I don't have much time, right? That and now opens up the opportunity and say like, oh, I want to live a healthier life, great, and I don't have much time. So I want to find something that is really a quick approach to help me to live a more healthier life. So that opens up opportunities. So replacing your buts in your language with ands really opens up that realm of possibilities and opportunities. And I think it's such a powerful way to communicate with others, right? By not just shutting down every idea with a but and finding reasons why something would not work, but using and as something that allows you to look at opportunities, right? Which opens up that space of possibilities. So just wanna give that to people so that they can practice that and do a checklist for one day, right? How many times you're using but and how many times you're using and. You're gonna be surprised that and is really like not very common in our language, and it really is fascinating that our mind is always producing these buts, these excuses, these narratives why something would not work and why something can't work, instead of like why something actually has a possibility to work. So empathy, one of my dimensions that um, I really um, um, feel that it's very practical for a lot of people if you're based on your choices, base your choices on that notion of empathy, right? So um, empathy is really about seeing the world through other people's eyes, right? It's a bridge that connects human experiences, unlocking really deeper understanding and more inclusive solutions. But it's not about just like seeing the world through other people's eyes. It's also empathy for your future self that I express in the book. So what I mean by that is that as soon as you try to visualize your future self, right? You say like, oh, this is going to be me in like 10, 15, or 20 years, right? This is how I'm going to feel. This is how I'm going to look like. This is how I'm going to be surrounded by people. This is the work that I'm going to do in 10, 15, 20 years. You're basically trying to have empathy with your future self. And I think that's a very powerful concept because as soon as you can understand your needs in the future that you will have, right, your choices will change today. So there was a really interesting research study done uh, at Stanford University by some colleagues of mine, where they tried to understand how someone basically changes their decisions and choices in the moment when empathizing with their future selves. What they did is they basically asked the students, a group of students, 20-year-old students, to envision themselves in 10 years from today. So they asked like, how do you envision your future in 10 years? And they said like, oh, I'm going to have probably like a faster car and I'm probably going to have a little bit more money. Then they asked the students to envision themselves in 20 years from today. And they reported back, yeah, I'm going to see myself being in a relationship or having a house and a place to live and doing some meaningful work. And then they asked the students to envision themselves 30 years from today. And this is fascinating because then the students reported back that they don't have a very clear picture of their future in 30 years from today, right? The picture got very blurry, even hazy. And so what they've done is they put VR headsets on the students and projected an image of themselves and how they're going to look like
Mhm.
in 25 or 30 years. So basically, they looked at themselves, a little bit more aged, a little probably more wrinkles and gray hair and so forth. And what happened was fascinating because the students reported back as soon as they, looked at themselves for a couple of minutes, they built empathy with their future selves. And what changed is the choices they made in the present moment. So they reported back that they will now start to live a more healthier life. They start to put more money into their retirement funds, actually double the amount of money put in their retirement funds. And they will change a couple of other things too. So what that means is as soon as you not just visualize your future self, but build empathy with your future self, you will change your choices and decisions in the present moment to really align with that future vision that you have for yourself. And the good news is you don't need VR headsets to do that. You can
Mhm.
just, close your eyes in the morning and just for a couple of minutes, try to visualize your future self. How will you look like in 10, 20, 30 years? Who will you be surrounded by, right? Who are the people that will be with you in that future? What job will you do? How is a day look like in your future and so forth. As soon as you can create a better picture of that, a more clearer picture, your actions and your choices in the present moment will actually change. And I think that's very powerful.
It is, and I imagine that it's probably hard to imagine for a lot of people. I think in the beginning of the book, you even gave a little scary number, 50 years, and I started applying to myself and thinking, is that even possible? Because for a lot of us, the future which is ahead of us is not imaginable at the moment, just because people haven't even lived this long. I mean, in 50 years, I'm not going to be 150, but still. So. How do we go about that? Do we need some kind of imagination, or are we, in the essence, still going to be humans and, in a way, similar to what, is there a core which will be preserved 50 years from now, which is already here? It's
Yes,
maybe a philosophical question, sorry.
absolutely. So I'm not a futurist who predicts futures, right? I don't think it's a good use of time. What I want to help people is don't start kind of like, creating these scenarios about 30, 40, 50 years out, right? Because what happens is it creates a lot of anxiety, right? Because our mind will basically go to some scenarios which are not that desirable, right? To be honest,
Mhm.
right? And that creates stress, it creates anxiety, and it creates all of those emotions. What I recommend doing is focus on the present moment and think about what are the choices that I make right now and how do they lead to the future that I want to see happening, right? So if
Mhm.
you want to, let's go back to like the answers that people are shared, right? If you want to
Mhm.
have a future that's that where you feel more at peace, right? Or more joyful, right? Think about what are some of the choices that you will make today that leads to a more peaceful, a more joyful future for yourself, right? If you think about a future where you want to feel more curious, right? Or fulfilled, right? What are the choices that you make today that will lead to that future, right? If you want to feel
Mhm.
more curious in the future, right? What are the questions that you ask today? And how many questions will you actually ask today, right? Think about that, and that will lead to a more curious future for you. If you want to see a future that's giving you a sense of peace and fulfillment, right? Maybe if you're waiting in line for your coffee today, right? Don't be angry or don't fall into this trap of being not patient. But maybe you turn around and tell the person behind you a compliment, right? What do you um, that you want to share with them, or maybe pay it forward, right? Maybe invite them for a coffee, right? Because that's gonna lead to more happiness for yourself. It's gonna lead to definitely peace, right? Because that person will be very friendly to you, right? Even start a conversation or something, or give you a compliment back, right? So you're already building that future that you want to see happening with the choices you make in every moment. And these are very small things that everybody can control, right? I can control in a situation where I wait in line, how I'm responding to that situation, right? Am I getting angry? Am I getting annoyed? Am I complaining? Whatever it is. Or do I choose kindness, right? Or openness or curiosity? And that's all in our control.
So that logically, not logically maybe, but naturally, I have a question because our conversation has been more on the side of philosophical, probably. There are chapters in this book which talk about creativity and experimentation and all those things, which obviously come from your background of working as the Chief Innovation Evangelist in Google. You also bring a lot of examples of Googlers and business examples because, well, when you read the book, it does have a lot of business foundation in it, as in, there are examples from businesses and from business people. Who did you write this book for, though? Because it doesn't sound like you were writing it for your typical Googlers and professionals who you normally teach.
Absolutely, yes. So um, I don't think the book is very philosophical, to be honest, right? I think it's very practical, right? And
Our
and
conversation has been a little more philosophical.
perfect. Yes, yes. And hopefully inspirational as well, right? I think that
Yeah.
combination of being inspirational and practical, I think is very powerful, right? Because inspiration by itself, right, is great, but like what is going to change in your life if it's not practical, right? So there are a lot of exercises, but there also like are 14 stories of people I've coached and worked with and really I admire, right? These are people like you and me, Christina, and people out there in the world um, that really chose openness, they chose optimism, they chose curiosity, they chose empathy in their lives. And what I want to express with these stories is how that really made a difference in their life, how they saw more opportunities in their lives, how they create a better future for themselves by really having that future ready mind state. And so the book is really for everyone, right? My mom really enjoyed it reading. My kids dove into it because I think there is a lot of things that not just make sense, but really, really are helpful in your daily lives to what I say, live a more future-ready life. And so um, the stories, the practical exercises or the practices, and the personal experiences I share that I from my early childhood to like the work I've been doing at Google and at Stanford and beyond with other organizations, hopefully create that inspiration that people hopefully need to really feel a little bit more control about their future again. And I know that's a high goal I set for myself, but hopefully fall in love with their future again, right? Because that's the only way that we can really create a better future for ourselves is if we really fall in love with our future and can't wait to actually live in the future, right? As in many conversations I had, people felt that they want to go backwards, right? They want to go back into
Mhm.
the past, right? Which is actually not possible. Or they want to, bring back the past. And I think that's not the right way, right? We need to fall in
Mhm.
love with our future again. And I hopefully share a couple of ways in how we can actually do that in the book.
It actually, I absolutely 100% agree. It is a very practical book, and I think I did mention how you can do the exercises as you read without in a way seamlessly. In fact, I like that one of the exercises was talking to my thought process, but I don't have a pen right now. Coming back to yes and yes but what I wanted to. God, I think I ran away with my own thoughts. Yes. I did think about what you were talking about right now, about the past and the present. And the one very big difference, which I personally, and that's my personal experience, was when I was a kid. I remember the anticipation. And as far as I know, in psychology, there is such a phenomenon that anticipation is more enjoyable than the actual event. And that was something which I thought about today as I was coming for this interview, that in the past, when I was a child, I lived much more in anticipation, which was an incredibly enjoyable state, versus now I live much more in the idea of actual accomplishment or the achievement, which, according to psychology, is less enjoyable than anticipation. That's just like an echo of what you were talking about. We have to be finishing. Unfortunately, the book is available on Amazon for you guys to check it out. And if Marsha is also among the audience, please do share the link. Here, I recommend to read the book. It is a business book in essence as well. But I say as well because I think it has a very strong philosophical undercurrent, even if it is not a philosophical book. And I want to do the traditional thing. I want to ask all my guests to leave a heart for my all the audience to leave a heart for my guest, Dr. Frederik. And if you're watching it in recording, which is a lot of people, leave a heart under the video. If you're live, leave it right now in the emojis. And while you're doing this, I want to ask the last and my favorite question. How would you like your book to change the world?
Thanks for leaving those hearts. I think that's already more that I could ask for, right? That expression of love and people being more kind to each other, people really embrace the future as something that they have control over, and really bring that back to that question that I shared early on, which is how do you want to feel in the future, right? Ask that yourself every day because that really determines how you're making choices in every moment. And um, thanks for sharing also in the chat. I have a quick test that people can take, an awareness test, which really tests yourself and how future ready you are. It gives you some insights into how optimistic you are, how open, how curious, how empathetic, how you like experiments and so forth. And so just take the test, and there are some recommendations, some practices that you can actually do that will be very personalized for you that hopefully train you in being more future ready and creating the future that you want to see happening. So, um, thank you so much for joining today, and thank you for engaging in my ideas and the practices and so forth. And if you want to reach out, just shoot me a note and tell me how, one of these exercises, these stories, or some inspiration has changed your life, because that really fuels my motivation to really put out these ideas and thoughts and practices even more.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frederik, for joining us and for this very the conversation, which actually made me think and feel and grow and expand. So thank you so much for the stimulating conversation. Thank you everyone who joined us. We are going to share the link to the recording later after, well, probably tomorrow morning. We usually share unedited link to recording as soon as we can so that you can get back to this conversation. Do get the book. The book is absolutely wonderful. It is a book of the week by Mindvalley Book Club, so recommended. We read every book that we recommend. We don't do that empty-worded. So get the book, rewatch the video if you have already seen it, and if you're not part of Mindvalley Book Club, sign up, because we review books every single week, and from the books that we review, we pick the best of the best, and we invite for these interviews because, as you know, I have access to the best authors in the world. Thank you, everyone. Thank you once again, and see you. Bye.